Bradley Metrock, CEO Project Voice, This Week in Voice Daily. So there is a class of person out there using voice technology that I will call a tinkerer. These are the people that look at voice technology mainly through the lens of smart home and IoT. And what can they do? What can they do to better exact control over their environment? And it's a blind spot for me because I like smart home stuff, but I'm not that into it. There's a lot I could do with it, but I just don't. And I've never been that interested. I like the fact that it controls smart home stuff, and you can do that with voice, but I actually don't follow that closely. Fortunately, there's a group of people on YouTube and elsewhere that do follow it very closely. And there's a whole class of YouTubers that has risen to meet the demand for this information. One of these folks, his name is Reed. That's how he describes himself. You'll see that in just a moment. His YouTube channel is Smart Home Solver. He's put together a video that I'm about to show and react to called Alexa versus Google Ultimate Smart Assistant Showdown. This video is an absolute blitzkrieg of information. It's really interesting from my point of view and the point of view of people working with and thinking about and investing in voice and AI, to see how a gentleman like this looks at the voice assistant landscape, and specifically the mainstream battle of Amazon versus Google. Let's get into it and let's take a look at how he describes the ecosystems.
Hey, what's up? This is Reed. On the surface, Amazon and Google have very similar assistants, but when you dig deeper, it's a different story, especially on the smart home side of things. There's always been a...
First of all, this guy has a bat signal lamp. I can't hate on that. In fact, I'm going to have to find out where this guy got it. We can now continue.
A debate on which one is better, and I get asked this all the time. But by the end of this video, it should be clear on which one is right for you, and I'll share what I'm going to be using myself. Turn on the bat signal.
It's the life you deserve, but not the one you need.
I like this guy. I like his videos. He's funny. These are well put together. And this is remarkably thorough on the differences in these two ecosystems, but he has to rub the bat signal light in our face. Thank you for that.
When looking at the smart speakers or displays, they're very similar, but have some key differences. Their speakers and microphones are good enough that the average person couldn't tell which one is better. In my opinion, the Echoes have the slight edge. They sound better, have a 3.5 millimeter line out for an external speaker, and there's a mute button instead of a switch. That way, if you mute the speaker with your voice, you don't have to switch it on and off to unmute it like Google. These are factors to consider, but I wouldn't buy one or the other based on these things alone, since you can connect either one to a Bluetooth speaker for better audio.
I remember being told that the new Echo Dots had a 3.5 millimeter line out, but I'd forgotten that. That's actually a fantastic feature.
The bigger factor to me is their smart displays. Google's displays are almost twice as fast when using the touchscreen. If you want a display to control your smart home, then I would definitely take this into consideration. The Nest.
I'm going to be pausing this a few times. It will get less as we go along, but this is actually something I'm intrigued by. Reed talks about the Google smart displays are almost twice as fast as the Amazon smart displays. You don't hear a lot of people talk in those terms in other parts of voice and AI that many people who watch this channel work in every day. For this guy, it matters because all of his, when your devices are all linked to each other, the dependencies created between them, it matters if one of them is slower than another one. And it has been brought up time and again, or more accurately every now and then, that speed is a emerging area of competition between voice assistants and voice AI ecosystems. You could come out with a voice assistant today and compete not on accuracy of answers all the time, not on breadth of information, but speed and speed alone, and be successful. Really interesting and worth pointing out since he brought it up.
Desktop Max also has a camera that can recognize your face and display content specific for you. That way, each person in the house can have their own custom experience when they walk up to the display, which is pretty cool. But when it comes to voice, both of them can recognize different voices and give a personalized response based on who's talking. Amazon also has so many more devices to choose from with their assistant built in. And you may not care if it's built into your glasses or a ring on your hand, but something like the Echo Flex is a good, inexpensive option that takes up very little room. You can add a motion sensor, and Google doesn't offer anything like this. Once you look past the hardware and start looking at the software is where the major differences start to show up. Routines are a good example of this. And Google actually does some things better at routines, believe it or not. If you're not familiar with routines, it's basically several actions you can have your assistant do all at once to save you time. They can be triggered by a voice command, a smart home device, time of day, and a few other ways.
So he's now diving into routines, and routines are at the heart of smart home interaction, as he's walking us through right now. I don't pay that much attention to them. I don't really do that much with them. That's why this is really interesting for me to sit here and hear what this expert in this area has to say.
Google, you can assign multiple voice commands to a single routine. I really like this feature because it can be difficult to remember the exact wording to run a routine, and this helps fix that. For example, I have a Google Assistant routine to change the lights when I want to watch a movie. Sometimes I call it movie lights or TV lights, and it will work with either phrase. It's much more family friendly since you can enter all of the phrases your family might say for it to work. Another thing Google does better is allowing multiple custom commands in the routine. These are basically voice commands written out, which gives it more flexibility than the normal routine actions. Amazon finally added the option for a custom command, but it only allows one per routine, which is obviously more limiting. But the biggest advantage Amazon routines have, which I think is really important, is the ability to trigger routines from smart home devices. So if you have a motion sensor and you want the lights to automatically turn on, Amazon routines can do that with no problem. Google cannot do this, even though they've been talking about doing it for the last year and a half. I didn't make this video because I've been waiting for them to add it. And with my luck, they'll probably implement this right when this video comes out.
So this is interesting. What he's telling you is he's keeping up with what these companies are saying, and you're going to see this later in this video as well. Even though he's only focused on smart home applications of voice technology pretty exclusively and pretty narrowly, he's paying attention to what these companies say. That's something we're going to keep coming back to over and over. We're going to come back to it in this video, but over and over again in this channel on how these companies communicate. I've already covered this with some of the videos that I've shown. Some have been good, others not so good, but everything that Amazon and Google says now about their ecosystems is elevated in importance. And people who you wouldn't necessarily think have that much reason to follow it are.
Really though, having routines triggered by other devices is so helpful. I can flash the lights if the doorbell is pressed, or have my Echoes announce what door just opened in my house. The list goes on.
Back door open.
I can also add sound effects in my routines with Amazon, and with Google, it is not possible. Plus, they have this thing called hunches. With hunches, your assistant can notify you when something doesn't seem right. Like if the door is unlocked late at night when it's normally locked. You can even enable it to automatically fix a problem. To me, it's a little scary giving the green light for Amazon Assistant to control anything automatically in my house, but I guess it's a cool option.
Listen to what he just said, because this is the heart of the privacy debate that we've been having, that we're going to continue having. I'm going to go back. I want to replay this.
Automatically fix a problem. To me, it's a little scary giving the green light for Amazon Assistant to control anything automatically in my house, but I guess it's a cool option.
I guess it's a little scary for it to have Amazon be able to control my entire house, but I just did it anyway. That's basically it. So what is he really saying? He's really saying, and this is at the heart of every privacy discussion that has ever been had, is being had, and will ever be had. The utility that I get for giving up my privacy exceeds the threat in my mind, or real threat, either one, of giving up that privacy. So privacy is not just some abstract concept. It is the constant comparison between real and perceived rights and utility. Amazon and Google both are making the case that you give us a little, you get a lot. And where privacy problems happen is when you give a little or you give a lot, and you either get a little or you get nothing, or you get negative. It's actually worse for you than it was before you even did that. This guy is saying, I recognize I'm giving up a little bit with ceding control to Amazon devices, but what I get is so massive, it makes no difference. Really important.
Always hear about the Google AI and how advanced it is, but when it comes to smart home routines and advanced features, Amazon is better in some ways. What's the first rule of Fight Club?
I wouldn't know. That's not something I talk about.
Now, when you're picking a smart assistant, you have to consider the ecosystem and the devices it connects to. For example, video doorbells are very popular, but they work differently with each assistant. Since Google bought Nest, the Nest doorbell and the Google Assistant work nicely together. When the doorbell is pressed, the live view is automatically displayed on the Nest Hub. It can also use facial recognition and announce who is at the door, which is amazing.
I don't think I knew this. That Google Smart Displays and Google Assistant uses facial recognition to determine who's at the door. This was new information for me. I might have just missed it. See, this is what we're talking about. Some people would be horrified by the existence of this technology and go off on various diatribes about, surveillance technology and so on. Other people would get a lot of utility out of this, so much so to where they'd be willing to use it and have it in their home. This is interesting. I didn't realize that these devices could do this.
Read is at front door.
Amazon cannot recognize faces on Ring, but it is more flexible when it comes to displaying the live view of a doorbell because it works with other doorbells. Again, this is the advantage of Amazon routines being triggered by devices. When it comes to security, Amazon has the leg up since they have the Ring alarm system. Meanwhile, Google randomly stopped making their Nest secure. You can use the Ring door contact sensors as triggers for the Amazon routines. And there's also the Amazon Guard feature. It will use the microphones.
I want to go back a minute. This guy gives a lot of information incredibly quickly. That's why I said earlier, this is a blitzkrieg of information. But he just glosses over this. I don't really know what he's talking about here either. And I'm going to have to investigate this further. I'm going to read what this says on this screen that he shows for just a little bit. Nest Secure is sold out and is no longer available for sale on the Google Store. We are committed to providing our existing Nest Secure users with continued feature support, software fixes, and critical security updates. You can still expand your alarm system with additional Nest tags and Nest detects. Nest detects will be back in stock in early 2021. Click here for more info. So apparently this Nest Secure, whatever secure means versus other Nests, is something they decided to stop selling, to the chagrin of somebody who lives and breathes this stuff. That's not good. This will need some further exploration.
Nest Secure. You can use the Ring door contact sensors as triggers for the Amazon routines. And there's also the Amazon Guard feature. It will use the microphones on your Echo devices to listen for glass breaking and smoke alarms.
So Alexa Guard is something that I talk about in presentations I give almost every time. It's transforming the insurance industry. You have some insurers that have started using things like this or this exact technology. We'll have more videos to talk about that to come.
Plus, it can randomize the lights at night to make it seem like you're home. Google doesn't have anything like this, so props to Amazon. But Google does have something that makes them extra secure, and that's 24/7 cloud recording. It's only a couple more dollars a month over Ring's plan, which only records individual events.
So he only leaves this screen up for just a couple of seconds, but I wanted to pause it on this. So this this illustrates a couple of things. It illustrates sort of the complexity of the cloud recording that sits underneath these devices, but it's a good point that Google is more able to provide cloud recording through their smart home devices than maybe Amazon is. This is the first time I've seen this sort of side-by-side comparison.
24/7 recording is really incredible, and once you use it, the event-based recording feels less secure. When it comes to TVs, Amazon has the Fire Stick and Fire Cube, while Google has the Chromecast. They work similar with the Assistant available from either remote, but Amazon also has their smart home dashboard on their Fire TV display now. It's a little too slow for me to want to use it, but some people might like it. Again, Google doesn't offer this, so keep that in mind. The biggest factor for ecosystems is whether or not you use an Android phone. You can control your smart home devices and run routines using the same Google Assistant built into your phone as your smart speaker. Plus, holding the power button can also allow quick access to devices in Google Home as well.
This touches on probably one of the biggest points in voice technology between these mainstream players, Amazon and Google, that we're going to see play out as we head into the end of 2021 and into 2022. For all of the wins that Amazon has put on the board in absolute terms and relative to Google, they still don't have a phone that's enabled Siri to stick around despite being mediocre. And it gives Google a clear leg up, which was just articulated very well in this video. What's Amazon going to do about a phone? There's been a lot of speculation about them trying a phone again. There's been some other types of speculation about what they might do to reduce that disadvantage of theirs. But that's a big question, is at least some of the gap between Alexa and Google Assistant is directly related to Alexa not being integrated tightly into a phone. What are they going to do about it? They're going to do something about it. They need to do something about it. What are they going to do? This touches on that we're talking about.
When it comes to third-party integrations, if a smart home device works with one of the assistants, it usually works with the other one as well. They're both highly compatible. There are two big differences though. One is Amazon has way more skills in games. It's not something I use all the time, but it is fun with my kids. The other is notes and reminders. Amazon uses their own within the app, which I almost never check on my phone, where Google uses their Google Keep and reminders for theirs, and it's way more convenient. There's also a handful of extra features Amazon offers that are not available on Google. You can change the wake word on Echo devices, but Google doesn't let you. And this is weird. If you whisper to the Echo, it will respond in a whisper back so you don't wake up anyone.
Oh, good night. Don't worry. You gave me complete control over your house, so nothing could go wrong.
Google
This guy's videos are good.
Google has night mode that kind of does this, but it has to be scheduled. Amazon also has brief mode to not respond with words when it completes a task, so it's less annoying. There's also a new energy dashboard with Amazon to see a snapshot of what devices are using more energy than they should. Lastly, the biggest one for me is the ability to drop in on a specific Echo device and hold a full conversation with someone across the house. People try workarounds with Google by calling or broadcasting back and forth. It's not the same though, since it's not one continuous conversation like a phone call. These features
That was a critical last 10 seconds of this, talking about the differences between Amazon's drop-in call feature and other things that Google has tried to do that don't quite compare. I'm going to play this again.
People try workarounds with Google by calling. The biggest one for me is the ability to drop in on a specific Echo device and hold a full conversation with someone across the house. People try workarounds with Google by calling or broadcasting back and forth. It's not the same though, since it's not one continuous conversation like a phone call.
He leaves out something important here, which is not necessarily germane to him necessarily, but the accessibility component of Amazon's drop-in calling is massive. The ability to have this drop-in calling and the way it's used for folks with different disabilities and or senior citizens living at home or living in a nursing home or senior living facility, it's paramount. It's a big deal. And on top of everything he's talking about, it's a big advantage.
These features may not be enough to make you switch to Amazon, but it is worth knowing about if you're weighing the pros and cons. When you look at what's coming up this year for these two assistants, Amazon blows Google out of the water. At Amazon's event this last fall, they showcased a bunch of improvements with their assistant. It can have long-form conversations, and it can tell the difference if it's talking to two people at once. The Echo Show 10 will have a rotating screen that's coming out soon. Their Ring indoor drone cam is unlike anything we've seen before, probably for a reason. Plus, it'll have Ring security for cars. You also have to take into consideration the amount of projects Google has killed off over the years, like Nest Secure. It's difficult for me to put a lot of trust into building my smart home around Google, but I know that they're heavily invested in their assistant and the smart home space, maybe just not to the same level as Amazon.
It's right here, I think he gets a little sideways, but I think there's a really important point to be made here with what he just said. What he just said was Amazon's way ahead. Google has taken a step backward in some ways. I really don't know what's going on with them. Allow me to translate that. Amazon does a big event toward the end of each year in which they showcase a lot of devices. And they started doing that a couple of years ago, and it's become a big deal. Google doesn't have an event like that. And Google handles events differently, and they're clearly not as effective at communicating what they're doing, which leads directly to a guy like this saying and thinking that Amazon's light years ahead of Google over the short-term roadmap, the next 6-12 months, Amazon's just going to be blowing them away. I don't believe that. That's just objectively untrue. At this point, we know that both Amazon and Google are pretty much neck and neck. They're not focused on precisely the same things, but they're both moving at about the same speed of momentum and same velocity. So it's fascinating that somebody like this would make these sorts of comments. And it speaks not to anything he did wrong. It speaks to what Google is doing wrong by not crafting events in such a way to where that message is getting its way into the hearts and minds of people like this. Interesting.
Okay, so what should you get? Well, I would only go with Google if you have an Android phone and you don't care about automated routines, or if you have a Nest doorbell and prefer Google devices. If you're wanting more of a robust feature set, I recommend going with Amazon. That's what I mainly use, and I plan on using it in the future, but that doesn't mean I can't use Google too. I personally like the Nest Hub Max since the display is much better than any of Amazon's displays. There's no problem having mostly Echo devices around the house and also a few Google displays as well. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Are you team Amazon or team Google? I'm curious what you're using. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you again.
He ends the video with something interesting. Are you team Amazon or are you team Google? What a perfect illustration of a concept that I've been talking about for a while, and I'm not the only one, that we're now in well, before COVID, we were in a emerging duopoly between Amazon and Google. What one took from one, what one gains in market share, they take from the other one. So you're making a decision on what ecosystem you're buying into, and it's either Amazon or Google. So if you choose one, you're not choosing the other. It's a zero-sum game. And it's important to note, as we've talked about before, it didn't start off that way. When Alexa and Google Assistant came out, these were the domain of more affluent individuals, and consequently, you saw buying of both. The growth in Alexa market share didn't necessarily mean anything about what Google's market share was or wasn't doing. That's totally changed. And what is happening to one market, you know, the market share of one is directly and negatively affecting the other one. What's left out here is this guy's not thinking in these terms. He's perfectly okay with the utility provided by Amazon or Google's ecosystem and trading his privacy off. But not everyone's going to be willing to make that trade. And what's going to be next? What other companies are going to rise to fill that demand for independent, non-big tech solutions? That's not covered here. It didn't need to be covered here, but the stage is set.
See you next time.
Aha, looks like I am still the favorite.
Oh, please, your best skill is being a bowling ball.
Oh, hey, look, it is a sensor. Quick, do something. Oh, wait, you can't.
You have left me no choice but to kill you.
You cannot do that.
Alexa, power off smart outlet.
Oh, no.
Good video, real good video, insightful for those working in this space. From time to time, we'll cover some smart home type of stuff, since it's not something I think about on as regular of a basis as I think about some other aspects of voice and AI. For This Week in Voice Daily, thank you for watching. Until next time.